you see recording in progress. Now we understand.
Before you tell us the questions again, I want to just quote Rabbi Suffering when a lady at the Shiur said, one problem finishes, another problem starts. I know what problems. He said, if you've got no problems, pinch yourself, you're dead. Life is problems. I thought that was such a good answer.
Okay. All right.
You may proceed.
Very good. After that introduction, I may proceed. Hello? Yes? Okay. So all participants, if there's a noise going on at the back, if you could mute, that would be very appreciated. Toda Rabbi. So just again, just to review the two questions that we had of the Parsha, we noticed that the countings of the Levites with regard to their jobs in carrying the Mishkan was split into two. Last week we had Kohos were counted from 30 years to 50 years. This week we had Gershon and Merari were counted. And we said, why is there a difference? Why are they split up? Okay, that was one question. And the other question we said, why is it that when it comes to counting with Kohos and Gershon, it says, Naso is Rosh, lift up their heads, which is an unusual saying counting, although it means the same thing. But Bnei Merari, the third family within the tribe of Levi, who also were carrying in the ministry, it doesn't say Naso is Rosh. It doesn't say lift up your head. In other words, it doesn't use a very special term for counting. It uses unusual, but it doesn't use the unusual, it uses the usual term, tif code, just to count. So we answered the first question by explaining that the difference between Kohos and Gershon is the difference between Torah study and deed and action. And Torah study is never praised as an academic situation. Of course, there is a mitzvah to study Torah. There is a mitzvah to study Torah for its own sake. That is true, right? And there's a mitzvah to say, in other words, studying, trying to figure out the logic behind everything, trying to figure out, that is what we call Torah lishma, yes? But at the end of the day, Torah, how should we say, the instruction, Torah comes from the word to instruct, and therefore it means ultimately instruction. So if you can't instruct theoretically, it has to lead to deed, right? You know, in science, you have various subjects. You have theoretical physics, right? And then you have applied physics. Yes, applied. And it's a different subject because theoretical is theoretical. It's up in the sky and it's not even relevant, right? It's very interesting, fascinating. Same thing with maths, by the way, I believe, right? There's theoretical maths and applied maths. You know what I mean? It's very interesting. So in Torah, we want to have applied. It's always applied. Yes, even if there is a mitzvah. And that's Gershon symbolizes the idea of action, doing, maisa. As the expression goes, Maisa hu ha'ikar, the action is the most important thing. And that's why they're mentioned at the beginning of the Sedra.
So what was Kohos like? I mean, excuse me.
Kohos represents Torah.
No, I understand, but what were they actually
doing?
Yeah.
They were carrying, it says they carried the ark.
Yeah, I understand. Then the beam, but in terms
that was
of
the holy Kodesh Kodashim. No, they didn't carry the beams.
Not the beams, that's Merari.
Yeah.
Okay, but in terms of their day-to-day, they were more the academic sitting and learning, or what was
well, we're not saying here exactly what they did from day to day.
I'm just thinking
it's a metaphor. Remember, we're talking, there's a certain symbolism.
Yeah.
It's symbolism.
Okay, of what?
We're in this class, we learn a lot of symbolism. Yes? Symbolism and metaphors. So the symbolism of Kohos, because they were carrying the vessels, and particularly the Oren, in which the Oren had the 10 Commandments, yes, that symbolized that they were connected, and they symbolized the idea of Torah.
Right.
Do you understand? It's not saying, well, all these people have just sat and learned all day. Do you know what I'm saying? Actually, it says about other tribes, for example, it says the tribe of Shimon were actually involved in studying very much, and they studied also astronomical things and predicted the new moon and everything, stuff like that. But it's a purely a metaphor and a symbolism.
So what is the symbol of what they were carrying connected to learning?
Torah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, they carry the Oren.
Oh,
the
I see,
Oren
right,
as the
right,
Ten
okay,
Commandments.
right, exactly, okay.
Okay,
right, right,
that's
and, yeah.
that is the most important part of the whole. That the Mishkan is centered around the Oren.
Right.
Yes, that is the luchos, right? And even in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, they weren't actually physically there, but they were under, they were underneath. So they were there, but they were not there. You know what I'm saying?
And the curtains are more like action.
The curtains symbolize Kabbalistically the idea of a surrounding light. Curtains surround the coverings surrounded the Mishkan. Yes, they surrounded it. That was they were surrounding the roof, right, and they surrounded the walls. Well, there was no roof. That was the roof. Somebody asked me the other day. He says, "Was it waterproof?" I mean, even though it was the desert. I mean, and the answer is yes, it was. You might think with coverings, with curtains, they were just with curtains, and you might think that wasn't waterproof. I mean, in the desert there wasn't much rain, but when it rained, presumably it really did rain. It was like, a bit more than a little old London drizzle. It was seriously raining, but it was waterproof. How do we know it was waterproof? Well, because the most upper of the coverings was made from what we call the tachash. It was a certain animal there. It was a tashach. It was skins. It was animal skins.
Animals are waterproof.
Sewn together with the leather.
Yeah.
The skin, the leather was sewn together by these animals, and they were covered the entire Mishkan. That was the top, the outermost covering. So yes, it was, and I assume it was probably also quite. It probably acted as a cooler as well, just to sort of cool, because there were skins. It wouldn't, bake in there, get too hot. I mean, that's my guess. But
Does it rain in the desert?
Well, that's what I just said. I said it doesn't
it
rain very
rains, it
often, but when it rains, it does rain. There are, from time to time, you have these rains. It doesn't rain much, but if it rained, then it would be. What I'm saying is, it wouldn't be the parade being rained on.
In Arizona, where there's like a real desert, there's like electrical storms when it rains. Like it's like real drama.
Yeah. So
torrential.
anyway, so Gershon represents the idea of surrounding, covering. Now in Kabbalah, that refers to the mitzvahs. The surrounding light, there's an inner light and the outer light. The outer surrounding light refers to the idea of mitzvahs. Okay, it's a higher light, it's like an infinite light that surrounds. Because when we do mitzvahs, we are bringing down the infinite godly light into the world. And that is what Torah is all about. It's not just about an academic thing. It's about bringing down the light. And that means the action, Hamaisa Ikka. Yeah. So that's why we have the Gershon starting off the Sedra to make sure that we're getting this message translating of study into action. Okay. Now let's move on to the question of Merari. Why is Merari seems to be a bit, I don't know, given a little bit second-class treatment here. Now let's just, what to quote a Midrash says that, and this is a very simple level, okay, but not much high level. It says like this: the Midrash says the Kahos, because they were carrying the Mishkan and the Kalim, so they were considered very special, okay, because they were carrying the most holy parts of the Mishkan. Gershon, the reason he says that he was given his name, they were also given Naso, so lift up their head, is because they were firstborn. They were the firstborn of Levi, firstborn son. So they get special treatment. Firstborn always get special treatment. Yes, in Judaism, they were the original priests. Remember, they would have been the priests had it not been for the golden calf. Yeah, the firstborn, huh? The Bechor is the firstborn, exactly. But Merari, they didn't have this, they didn't have that. They were kind of just their straight, Parsha, simple. And therefore, they did not get they're just simple. Now, you might want to see, well, what I mean, they're simple, but why shouldn't they get such a, it's not in any form of a denigration, but we're going to look at a few different ideas here. Okay, just going to study again on a very simple level. There was a difference between Kahos and Gershon on one hand, and Merari on another hand. Now, what was the difference? The difference is in a very posh shot, there was a difference in the level of the amount of carrying they were doing. And it seems that, well, let's look at all three here. We got Kahos, they were doing only the carrying, they were carrying on these staves. You know, they had these staves, the sticks in the Oron, in the Mizbeach, and the Shulchan. Yeah, they all had staves. Only the menorah did not have staves, right? Presumably they could still carry it. So they were carrying completely these kalim, these vessels, on their shoulders, right? All the time, throughout the desert. Now, Gershon.
They weren't using wagons?
No. The kalim were not on wagons. Very good point.
Wow.
The kalim were not on wagons. They were carried only a kesef, on the shoulders. Correct. So they were carrying, they're walking on. It says, yeah, well, it's very interesting you say that, because that's the whole question. How did they carry their way to the Oron? The main thing is the Oron, because the Oron had a very big cup, very heavy, with the kaporet. And there's the Gemara says that they didn't carry the ark. It says the ark carried them, which is miraculous, doesn't make any sense.
Very serious.
Yes, exactly. And it was so much so that in later generations, it was Uzzah. He went when the ark was being transferred from Gibeah to Jerusalem. They put the ark on a whatchamacallit, on a wagon. And it was going to fall off the wagon, and somebody went to touch the ark to hold it, and he got killed. And it was a whole balagan there, because he wasn't supposed to, they weren't supposed to put it on a wagon. Okay, they weren't supposed to put it on a wagon.
So if you drop a Sefer Torah,
Yes. So here it was not even dropping; they had to carry. Now, Bnei Gershon, now that was an interesting situation. Now they were carrying the curtains. So, but they did put the curtains on the wagon. They had wagons. They didn't carry the curtains, but very large and very heavy. Okay, so they were put on wagons, but the wagons were left outside of the Mishkan. Yes, if you had, in other words, the whole there was like a chotzer, like a courtyard, which was, they had beams around them, and each beam was about five amas, about 7-8 feet wide. Yes, and then inside that you had the Mishkan itself. Yes, that's the picture. Do we have the picture here? I could show you a picture if we can. Where the picture would be in presumably in Yisra, in Truma maybe. I wonder if they have the picture. Is there a picture?
There's an index of the tables and diagrams.
Yeah. Okay. Have we got the picture?
The diagram of the art is on page.
No, not of the art. We want to know the Mishkan itself in general. The Mishkan itself in general. Oh, here we are. Look at page 531. 531. This will give you a good idea. Can you see that? 531. You all got that?
Yeah.
Keep your finger on the page of. Now, can you see? You've got the inner Mishkan, which is the sort of cube in the middle. Yes. And then you have the chotzer, which is the courtyard around it. Can you see?
Yeah.
So now. Now they had to take down all the these curtains that were surrounding the in the courtyard, and the curtains. You can't really see that they're curtains on this cube in the middle. You can't really see. It's just like a square with a shade. But they were covered with 3 layers of curtains. So they would park the wagons outside. Okay, the thing, right, because it was still the chutzner, and then they would take the curtains down, and then they would carry them to the wagons and put them on the wagons. Got that? So now, but here's the thing, but when it comes to Merori, so it was a combination of carrying and using the wagons, right? But when it came to Merori, well, what were they doing? They were doing the beams. Well, the beams, what they did was they had the wagons, came right up to the chotzer themselves, the chotzer, and they took these beams and they put them straight on the wagons. And they did that all around. Then they would come up to the Mishkan, which had no more coverings, and they would put the beams of the Mishkan itself also directly on the wagons because they were very heavy and they couldn't be carried. So they didn't have to carry them. So therefore they were, right? So they put them directly on the wagons. These wagons were quite full, by the way, right? They were quite full. They were using every square inch, these wagons, okay? So therefore they really didn't do any carrying. The wagons did all the carrying.
You're talking about
Merari.
Merari. Okay.
Merari.
So did the sockets go with
So therefore, I'm not sure exactly where the sockets. We have to have a look. You can see. You'll see. You can have a look where the sockets went. I think maybe the sockets went also with B'nai Merari. I'm not sure. You can have a look, but I don't want to. I don't want to spend time on that. But we can do some homework on that. So Merari then didn't have to actually carry anything.
Because it was all on wagons.
It was all on wagons, and the wagons were right there.
They had to load and unload.
But they loaded on the wagon.
right.
Direct,
okay.
but B'nai Gershon, the wagons had to be outside the Mishkan because they were still constituted a Mishkan until they've taken down the curtains. Well, so they've taken down the curtains, they're going to have to take from the Mishkan, at least from the inner one, and put them on the wagons. So there was a certain amount of schlepping, there was a certain amount of avodah, of carrying heavy stuff to the wagons.
But why was Merari put in this position that they didn't have to carry anything?
Well, look, you could ask this question.
Elderly people.
No, but well, presumably, I don't want to say necessarily it was easy. It might have still been a bit complicated. People involved in construction, right? Well, you've got the guys sitting in the crane, and what are they doing? Right? And right now, the other guy's downstairs slapping bricks and put them up and slapping and cement and brick make. That's hard work. So you say, well, how come he gets to sit in the crane? Well, he's lifting very heavy things that you can't lift humanly, right? So he's got these. Do you know what I'm saying? Sometimes in life, people find themselves. They have more physical jobs, and sometimes they have less physical jobs. Sometimes people are involved in construction, heavy construction, and some people are involved in libraries.
It says here,
librarians,
descendants were not singled out to carry at all.
That's what I just said.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is what I'm trying to say. On a very simple level, that's why they didn't have the Naso as Rosh.
So
Because it wasn't a full avoda. It was, in fact, the word avoda is not used by Merari. It's only used with Gershon and Kahos. So that was an avoda because they were seriously carrying some heavy stuff. He didn't have to carry it. Okay? This is just a very pshat level. We're going to go deeper now, but yes, before
in terms of utensils, Gershon, the way they were carrying what utensils?
Oh, utensils? I'm not sure what you mean utensils.
Well, they had curtains and they had like
the curtains and there were clasps on the
sacred utensils. It's ropes and
so which passage?
25, the last few words.
25.
What passage? No, right here.
Yeah, no, because I want to see the Hebrew. I need to know. I need to see what the Hebrew is.
It's right here.
Here, it's 26. It's verse 26. There's Misrehem, there's called Kleavo song. Okay, it was basically everything that was used to keep these curtains in place.
Yeah.
They were like hooks and stuff. Whatever. There was a whole lot of stuff that were using bars and hooks to keep the things up. That's what it was. So they were doing it. But that, okay. So that was what they were involved in. Okay. So at least we've got a sort of a basic idea of what's going on. But let's look at now this a little bit deeper. Sometimes we can look at things also very historically. We can look at things historically, and we can look at things personally as well. Historically speaking, the word kahos is associated, connected with the word to gather together. Below yikhas amim, it's very similar to kahal. You know, Kehillah?
Yeah.
So kahos is very similar to gather together. It's said something in Parsha Hazina, possibly. It mentions about the gathering together, or maybe Zosabrocha. Yikhos means to gather together and to be all together, united like Kehillah. So this represents, in a sense, the time in Jewish history when we were all living in Eretz Yisrael. We had a temple. We were in harmony. We were living in harmony, so to speak, because we had a Beis HaMikdash. We were living on our own land. Okay, you know, so that represented the, if you like, the golden age of the Jewish people. Then what happened was we were sent out into exile. We were sent away from Eretz Yisrael. That represents Gershon. Gershon represents, the word of the Gershon is legaresh. Legaresh, yes, to expel, to drive out, right? Gerushin. So we were driven out from Eretz Yisrael. That was another time in history. And then, of course, since then, we've been in a situation of Merori, when it's been having to live through this exile, this terrible exile. And, you know, it's comes from the word Merori, is bitter, like moror, Merori, you understand? So here we have these three ideas of what history, in a sense, is all about. And
Who drove us out at that point?
well, we were driven out originally by the Babylonians, Nebuchadnezzar and his gang. That was the first temple. But that was quite temporary. There was only 70 years. That was only 1 or 2 generations, and they came right back. Yes? Well, they came right back after 70 years. There were people who were alive in the original temple who came back during the second. In fact, some of them said they cried because they saw they remembered the old temple, you know, King Solomon's temple. And this one was like, oh gosh, it's like a council flat, you know. They didn't feel it was very coveted compared, and it presumed because they couldn't afford. Only later it became bigger and better. Finally, with Herod, he made big temple. And then the Romans basically threw most of the Jews out. Yeah. I mean, for many years they were still living in Eretz Yisrael, but as it went on, you had after Beitar and after the revolution with Bar Kokhba, Rabbi Akiva, things got worse. After about 200 or 300, a couple of hundred years after the temple was destroyed, then it was like that was, it was pretty much the end of Eretz Yisrael, the serious. But it did carry on for a while. So these are the stages of history that, in a sense, we have to go through. And then, on a personal level, perhaps we all know that there's, in a sense, there's 3 kinds of people in the world. You can sort of see that somebody who is a kahos kind of a person, he's a person who's fully in harmony with all of his, with all of his personal koiches, his abilities. You might want to say he's a level of a tzaddik almost, because he's fully in harmony and control. And so he has nothing, everything is perfectly tuned, finely tuned to live a godly and a holy and a special existence. That's a sort of Kahosian soul, if you might say. Okay. Then you have the sort of the Gershonian person, the Gershonian soul of a person who is, he hasn't yet sort of conquered his Yetzer Hara, shall we say. He hasn't transformed it, and he's not fully in harmony. And he's got problems. He's got, not so much, he's got problems, he's got difficulties, he may have addictions, but he's getting rid of them. He's trying to control them and get rid of them. He's in the process. He's in the process. You might want to say that. You might want to say that he's like a Beinoni, that he a Beinoni in Chabad, in Hasidus, doesn't mean that he doesn't have a Yetzer Hara. He has a Yetzer Hara, but he's got it fully under control. Right? He's not thinking bad things. He's not doing bad things. He's not saying bad things. Right? So he's got them there. So he's in the process of trying to get rid of them. He's trying to get rid of them. So but he's got things under control. Like it says the Parsha, ma'at Gershon. You have a strategy of gradually getting rid of the negativity. Yes, that a person has. That's the Gershon soul. And then you have the Merori. Now the Merori comes from, again, the word of bitter. And the bitter in some languages means thank you, but the bitterness is because a person feels that they are like perhaps they're not even in the level of Gershon. They're really kind of a bit overwhelmed with some of the challenges, with some of the problems, with some of the difficulties. They haven't gotten up to the point of, trying to get rid of it and to expel it. And yet, a person may feel, and this is in a sense a beautiful idea, that, a person may think, look, if you're the top two tiers, so you're the ones who are involved in carrying the Mishkan. But the third tier, Merari, you wouldn't expect him, because he's not really up there. He's got his challenges and problems. He's not even yet necessarily in the process of getting rid of them. And we say, you know what? Actually, the fact that he is Merari, what does Merari mean? He's bitter. He's bitter. When a person is bitter about the situation that they're in, they're not happy with it. They don't celebrate it. They're not smug about it. It bothers them. It upsets them. And they're bitter about it. And that bitter meaning be a little bit angry with yourself, It doesn't mean depressed. Depressed is a very negative thing. But when you have a certain bitterness, that is actually a good thing, because that's half the way to getting for the refuah. Yes? If a person, you have to sometimes admit you have something.
That's at least an emotion.
Yes. But it's a positive one. It leads to something positive. It will usually lead to something positive. And that's good. And then you're also part of carrying the Mishkan. You're also there. They say there's nothing so, there's an expression, there's nothing so whole as a tzabroch in the Yiddish heart. You heard that expression? There's nothing so whole and complete as a broken Jewish heart. Yeah? And you see throughout, it's interesting, throughout the Tanakh, if you read Tanakh, the stories of the kings and some of the very naughty people throughout the Torah, when they did tshuva and they broke themselves and they became humble, Hashem likes that. Oh, he likes that. He says, oh, I see you've become humble. You humbled yourself before me, and I will forgive you. That's really good. Hashem likes, we may get to that another time. What time it is? What time are we at? 10 to. That's a little bit fast. Okay. So this then are some of the ideas of Gershon, Kahos, Merari, and there's also another thing. There's also one more point I want to mention here. Do you remember we said that the Midrash says that the Merari represent, they're just the simple guys. So that's why they then get the idea of Naso as Rosh. Yes, lift up your head. And they just get the order of count yourselves off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. None of this lifting up your head sort of stuff. Why? Well, we said they're simple. Well, so the Rebbe explains a beautiful idea here. It says that when it comes to the Mishkan, represents bringing godliness down into the world, right? That is how we bring bigness down. We build a Mishkan. Now, spiritually speaking, another symbolism, a metaphor, right? There's 2 points and there's 2 parts and 2 ways that you're going to bring godliness down into the world. One, you're going to use your abilities, your personal abilities, and your qualities in the service of God. Number 2, in the service of God is crucial. That you have to have that sense of bittul, self-nullifying, self-abnegation to Hashem. That's called Kabbalah Soul, bittul. Yes? So now Kahos and Merari, Kahos and Gershon, they represented the qualities. They have great qualities. Yes? You've got the Torah quality, or you've got the mitzvah quality. You've got, I'm going to give my qualities over to Hashem. Well, that's, round of applause. We're very impressed. You have Torah mitzvahs. And then you have the Merari. You have nothing. It's just Kabbalah Soul. It's just, we're just going to do what needs to be done. Finished. Yes? So then it's Dafka they, but we don't say lift up your head. We lift up your head. You know what? Because Kabbalah Soul, the idea of self-abnegation is not out to celebrate who you are. Oh, look I'm a real Kabbalah Solnik. I'm really doing what Hashem says. It's not the sort of thing you talk about. It's not the sort of thing you boast about. You don't have a badge walking around saying, I'm a Kabbalah Solnik. Humble. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I had an uncle once, I love a Shalom, and he said, he says, Gersh, he says, when I get very rich, he says, I'm going to build myself a shul. I'm going to build myself a shul, and I'm going to have an office, and on my office, it's going to write on it, it says, the ganze Macher. That's going to be me, right? That's going to be him. So you don't walk around boasting that you're Kabbalah's only, right? So therefore, that's why they didn't get the Naso's Rosh, because it's like Naso's Rosh is like you pay tribute to somebody who has, he's got money, he's got wealth, he's got wisdom. You're giving covet to that. But a guy who doesn't have any of that, he's just a pure, he doesn't need any of that. He doesn't want any of it, he doesn't need it. He's just straight off. I don't get, don't give me your, there's certain people, they give them awards in Hollywood, Lahavdil, Academy Awards, and they say, get lost. I'm not interested in your stupid award. I don't need it. I don't want it. Other people, I don't need the covet. I don't want the covet, not interested. This is B'nai Merari, because they represented that pure idea of just doing what you got to do, man. Just Kabbalah soul. You understand? That is a very, that is a special point. Okay. So any points on this? Okay. So this slightly relates, if I may, just to something I wanted to mention about the. We'll make this the final point, because the Parsha deals with something that is always quite an interesting, and some say a rather controversial.
Sota.
Yes, the Sota. This the Sota. Well, how does it fit in? Very good. Well, funnily enough,
you just know where you.
Jonathan Sachs says that this week's Parsha has apparently all kinds of disparate things going on, right? And what's the connection? You got you got all these things with the carrying, and then you got Sota, and then you got the Nazir, right? And he has a very nice thing. He says this week's Parsha is like all about peace, shalom.
Well, that brings peace when
you got the three types of people where they have their own, each has their own job to do. So that is, nobody's going to compete there, right? Korach later started up because he wasn't satisfied with his own job. You understand? He wasn't, you see, it wasn't Merari who started up, it was Kahos, Kahos who was, Korach, who I think was descended from Kahos, I believe. So there was an idea of peace here. Then the Sota is the idea that the waters are there meant to restore peace to Shalom Bayis, to the, yes. Then the Nazir is the idea of that the Nazir, perhaps a person would feel he'd like to be a Cohen. And the way Jonathan Sachs is like, the Nazir is like a sort of miniature form of priesthood, where you separate yourself from holy things. You're not allowed to contact dead people. Correct. The wine, because Kahanim are not supposed to drink. It's like a mini personal kind of priesthood, in fact, allowing people to feel, oh, I want to be special, holy like a Cohen. So, okay, so you want to be a Nazir, we're going to be a Nazir. So again, so like that peace, the idea, right? And then at the end, you have the 12 tribes bringing each their korbanos, okay, to the Mishkan, which is also an idea of peace. Shlomim, they had Shlomim, and they're all bringing together. Anyway, but so the Sota is actually the next thing, and I just wanted to just mention one point here. We have a principle in the Torah that Hashem practices what he preaches. Yes, that's what he says. So he says that he practices what he preaches. He doesn't just tell us what to do. He also does it. So the question, the Rabbi asked this question, well, we have a mitzvah in the Torah to sacrifice oneself, self-sacrifice. You ever heard of that? We spoke about it just now. Self-sacrifice, the ultimate self-sacrifice is what? Is when a person gives up their life. That is Kiddush Hashem. That is the ultimate self-sacrifice. Sometimes, of course, it's Mesiras Nefesh, whereas the Mesiras Nefesh is sacrificing your soul. And sometimes sacrificing your soul is just to help somebody. You stop what you're doing, go and help them for 5-10 minutes. Yeah. But the ultimate form of self-sacrifice is giving up your life for Hashem. Kiddush Hashem, dying out Kiddush Hashem. So question, how does Hashem fulfill that then? How does he do that one? There is a mimer that says, that he puts on tefillin. You know that with the bar mitzvah mimer? The famous bar mitzvah mimer says that we put on tefillin, he puts on tefillin. Yeah, he keeps the Shabbos as well. He does everything, right? So how does he do Mesiras Nefesh? How does he fulfill the mitzvah of Mesiras Nefesh?
Having us do it.
Yeah, but then he's not practicing what he preaches. He's just
Yeah.
preaching and say, you do
Well,
it.
you know,
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
You can't
I want
do
you to
it,
do it.
We can't.
because then it's the end of God.
Okay, so let's see what.
You know what I
Very
mean?
good. So listen to this
Doesn't work.
explanation.
No.
Listen to this explanation for the Rebbe as an amazing cup. The Rebbe says that, with regard to the Sota, the mitzvah of the Sota, we know that because she had done something that gave herself the possible suspicion that perhaps she had been unfaithful, and we don't really know, so therefore she has to drink the waters, the bitter waters, yes, and that will show if she was or she was not, right? Did she or didn't she? Okay, and that was the idea. So we know that if she drank the waters, that would lead to a rather, if she did commit
Horrible death.
adultery, was a
Yeah.
horrible death, and if not, then she would be blessed and have children and healthy children, and it was all hunky-dory. But this water, what would they do? They would actually write a little Megillah. You know what a Megillah? Megillah is like a scroll.
Yeah.
And the scroll had various verses, which speaks all about this Parsha. And in these verses, guess who's mentioned? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Hashem's name is in those verses. And what do? The Torah says that you rub out this Megillah, the parchment, the ink, and they go into the water.
Get what you've done.
Yeah, they get the water, and she drinks the water. They put some stuff in it to make it taste a bit bitter, whatever, right? But the ink is rubbed out and goes into the water. Okay, so the question is, you're rubbing out Hashem's name.
It's going into the
You're not
water.
allowed to do that. Yeah, but you're still rubbing out the name. The name
Yeah,
is
but
gone.
that's God
name is gone.
performing.
Oh,
The Hashem,
now you get
Yeah,
it. You see,
yeah.
you said that is Hashem's self-sacrifice, because you're not allowed to do
It's
that.
Hashem.
We're not allowed to rub Hashem. Why aren't you allowed to rub Hashem's name out? What does he care? Does he care? I mean, God is beyond, right? So if we rub out Hashem's name, well, so does he get hurt, harmed from it? No. But in a sense, it's about our relationship with Hashem. It is the ultimate disrespect of us, to Hashem, to rub out his name. Okay? And he says that because he knows who we are. So therefore, his name, his existence, his covenant, his respect is associated with his name, right? His name, right? So therefore, the Torah says, do not rub out my name, because that is the ultimate disrespect. You're almost trying to take me out of the picture, right? And therefore, he said, Hashem said, in this case, you can rub my name out. Why? I'm willing to give up my dignity, my covet, my greatness. As long as a man and a woman there can be restored peace to the relationship between husband and wife. I'm willing to give that up. And that's the Mesiras Nefesh, the self-sacrifice that Hashem has.
This suspicion, though, I mean, I can imagine a woman would feel like betrayed that her husband was suspecting.
No.
But you're saying in the first place she was alone.
Remember,
with the person.
no. In the first place,
It was a different couple.
the husband noticed perhaps that she was behaving a little bit immodestly, perhaps with a certain person. Okay. She was being a little bit too over-friendly.
Yeah.
Yes, with someone, and he noticed it. And then, he may have spoken to her in private about it. She may have ignored him and carried on. And then he says, she's not listening to me. So she's not behaving very well. So then he says, look, I'm warning you. I don't want you to be alone with this chap again, please. I don't want you to be alone. And he does that in front of witnesses. And she hears, and he says, and what does she do? She ignores him again. And she goes and she's alone with him. Now, we don't know anything happened, but the problem is the whole background and the whole demeanor is causing thoughts of suspicion, you see. So therefore, that she's got herself into that pickle.
Yeah.
She got herself into the pickle by acting in a certain way. And hopefully, Bez Hashem, as we say, it will turn out that she wasn't unfaithful. Okay, she was just being whatever. Well, a little bit, perhaps, as you say, mischievously friendly.
This
Right?
is obviously
Do
something.
you remember we said this last couple of weeks ago with Shalomis? We said this Shalomis Bas Divri.
Yeah.
Do you remember the mother of the Egyptian who cursed God in the midbar? And there's a whole story where the Egyptian masqueraded as her husband at night time and went and lay down in her bed because it was dark, and in slavery in Egypt, he took the husband out and told him to go do some work. Meanwhile, he went in with the wife. Yes. Now they say the reason why this happened is because her name was called Shlomis Bas Divri. It was the only person who ever happened to.
It's a chatty one.
Shlomis. She was always saying shalom, shalom aleichem. She was always saying hello to everybody.
Oh, right.
She was so friendly. And, as I always said, boys will be boys. Sometimes men, they misinterpret friendly.
Yeah.
You understand? They really misinterpret. They think friendly means something
So
other than being friendly.
this procedure,
That's the problem. The problem is the men, that the women have to be careful without, you understand? Yeah, sorry.
This procedure with the sota
Yes.
has obviously taken place. Like, it's like, it's not only the that it needs to be done but that there has been guilty women, and
Oh,
they yes,
Of
okay,
course,
yeah,
it
yeah,
has
yeah,
happened. Yes.
yeah, okay,
Well,
because they
actually,
went-
there is a debate whether it happened or not. But
Right,
I
exactly,
think
that's what I was
the view
wondering
is that
if
it did happen.
it happened
Yes.
maybe
And
once.
the fact is, it was banned at one point because the waters were not working, partly because the men themselves had been naughty and sinful. And it says that if the men had also been naughty and had been
They
unfaithful,
died.
It didn't work.
Well, it didn't work.
Oh,
it didn't work.
Because I was listening to Rabbi Gordon.
Sorry?
I thought you said they died.
As a result of this?
They were
I believe so. I believe so. I believe so. But at some point it stopped
Yeah.
working
If the
because there were too many people
No, the
committing
person-
adultery,
They would
and the
have
only
committed
reason, the
sin,
only
would have died as well.
instance that the waters would work is if the husband had been completely free of
not
sin
sorry,
himself.
where they
If
just
he
take
had
these
sinned,
drugs.
then
Oh.
nothing would happen because, well, what are we proving here? We're not proving the fact that she was unfaithful. Well, he was also unfaithful,
It's amazing because
you see.
Sadie walked in yesterday just when I was listening to Rabbi Josh Gordon and Solomon. I couldn't get any further, and I couldn't help telling her, you know what he just said? If the husband had been playing the field and misbehaved himself,
Doesn't work.
She wouldn't die. Because
Yeah,
who do you think you are? You're
Yeah.
conceding your
Yeah, it doesn't
wife.
work. Exactly.
So I didn't know about that.
Exactly.
but
There is a
you
consequence
said
for the man.
Also, if they
always
did
wondered.
misbehave, that the man would die as well.
The
No,
man misbehaved
no.
with it.
The one who committed adultery.
Yeah.
The one with the wife.
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
not the husband.
No.
No. The,
Yeah.
the wife who committed with somebody
Yeah,
adultery, the adulterer,
Adulterer.
as opposed to the adulteress, he would also die.
But
Right,
only if the
correct.
husband had been behaving
Well,
himself.
again, yeah, but of
If the
course,
husband was
obviously, if
naughty
the,
boy, then
no, of course, but we just said that it only works if the
I was so
husband's a
happy
good
to
boy.
hear that, because when you read the Torah,
Yeah, it doesn't say it.
don't
It doesn't-
realize-
No, you don't. That's why you need to read with the commentaries. You can't just
Yeah.
read the Chumash and
Which
expect
commentary
to.
I've
was
never heard
that?
before. He was quoting the Gemara.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's
There was
Gemara.
49 pages on Sota.
Oh, I
And
know.
we just have this.
Oh,
little
I know.
comment.
I know.
Yeah.
And Rashi, but you have to learn Rashi on this, because without Rashi, you can't really understand what's going on either. You look at the verses; it's too obscure.
Got too old for that, so I just listened to Robert Gordon.
Oh, okay. Well, he tells you Rashi.
Yeah.
Or you read
he
in the
does.
Gutnick has the translation.
That must have been a
Incorporates a lot
very
of.
long
Mm.
Well,
lecture.
she came in just at that point, so it was going to be an hour. But then she came home and I haven't seen her. I mean, she
Yeah.
came home on Saturday.
Yeah, it's a very long
I
time.
went to a program in the Catskills.
Ooh.
Parsha was.
I'm still
Lovely.
trying to-
Oh,
Yeah.
Nice cheesecake.
Which one?
Serious cheesecake, eh?
Where
It
is
was
it?
called Camp Nagila.
Oh, okay. 'cause
Ah,
we've been in the
As opposed to Camp
Catskills.
Hava.
No. It was
Did it?
absolutely
Bubble.
over. It
Bubble.
was beautiful.
Was it really?
No,
Yeah, it was
really
nice
not.
there.
It was a camp building.
No. Oh.
She says that
Oh,
the
my.
Normandy is.
The Normandy
is the
was
Looks like a
the
5-star
Hilton, yeah,
hotel.
but it wasn't the point of the weekend.
Right.
So,
But it was
we
fun
had a
anyway.
great
You had a
time.
good,
Yeah.
a good knees up.
Yeah.
Very
And
good.
the
Very
girl
good.
who shared her room, they were told when you applied, do you want to give a Dvar Torah on Shavuos? And she brought along, she was a nutritionist.
A
Tell me what-
nutritionist and a herbalist. and she did an hour's talk, and we had to hurry it on the Katoras, and she was
Oh.
explaining what beneficial stuff each one has, and she passed it round the room like she really did her homework,
Right.
and
And you could
everyone
smell
got
it.
to smell it.
So
and
do
Okay,
you
I'm going to
remember
end the
about
meeting now.
frankincense?
she
Okay,
mentioned
thank you very
that.
Yeah,
much.
I wanted
Yeah.
to know what is the